Okay, hello YouTube. Today I went about the process of trying to figure out what is the best opening for the average tournament player to play with the white pieces. So if you like content like this, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and click on your notification icon. So today I was just kind of going around and I was looking at the Lichess database and the Masters database, and I was trying to figure out where are people playing really poorly with black, where are average players deviating the most between the Lichess database and the Masters database. So my first thought was to look at some e4, e5, knight f3, because it's very popular in the Masters database. It's the most popular thing among average players is e4, e5. It's by far and away played the most. So this should lead us to what is probably the best opening. So I'm looking at these, three different moves. So the first thing I wanted to examine was knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5, and yet, as you can see, like the most popular move here is c3. But when I started looking at the theory, I didn't see a whole lot of deviation here between C3 in the Lichess database and the Masters database. The amateurs, the average player was playing pretty close to the same way that the Masters were playing in this position. And, because of that, black was getting decent enough positions, and of course so was white. So I started examining other moves, like maybe different move orders. We could play the quiet game, we could play d3, and again I saw that masters and average players were playing these positions at, fairly competently, at least for the first 10 moves or so. But then I started looking, I was thinking to myself, when I was a younger player, and even today, I had huge success with the white pieces with certain gambits. So this was just me trying to remember like the huge successes that I had with certain gambits. So I started looking at b4, and I started looking at how do average people handle the Evans Gambit, and where does this have a significant deviation from how masters handle it? Well, both masters and amateurs are taking. And then, of course, the most popular move is c3, because that's the whole point. So we're going to play c3. And then the most popular move in the Lichess database and the Masters database both is bishop a5. So now the best move is d4, and then we have e takes d4. And then there's kind of two moves here. There's queen b3, and there's castles kingside. And I've played both. I actually do play queen b3 quite a bit, just to try to get black to commit his queen. But when I examined both moves on the Lichess database, my discovery is that maybe castles kingside is the best move. I mean, for starters, the computer certainly likes it likes both. It likes queen b3 and it likes castles, I think, about the same. Castles is really kind of the old theory. It's the move that's the most tried and tested. And of course, like the best move against castles is something like bishop b6. But I want to point something out. Like if you look at the average player here, which is like 1800. 1800s on the average are playing bishop b6 the least, and it's the best move. Most 1800s are taking another pawn, or they're playing knight on g to e7. And I was absolutely shocked at how quickly and how badly they were losing in these positions. So, for example, you have this dc3. This is known as the fully compromised defense. This has been known for a really long time to be very bad. Actually, one of the coolest games in this actually happens in the Masters database. I don't know if they have it here because this Masters database only goes back so far. But it was Bobby Fischer versus Ruben Fine. It was in my 60 memorable games. It continued queen b3, queen e7. We'll see if it pops up down here. If not, I'll just show you the rest of the game from memory. Knight c3, and it's not popping up. They're showing bishop c3, but that game that Fischer played against Ruben Fine went knight f6, and then, well, you can already see the assessment is, through the roof here. But Fischer continued with knight d5, knight d5, e d5, knight e5, knight e5, queen e5, bishop b2, hitting here and here, and you can also see that when the bishop goes here and hits here and here, that this king is in bad shape. You can see the computer's giving +6 here. Queen g5 got played, and then Fischer played actually a pretty clever move here, even though, again, the computer is finding faster wins. Yes, it's destroying all of the classic games we love. But h4 was the move that Fischer played. He distracted that queen temporarily, and then he played bishop takes g7, rook g8. He shuffled a rook over to e1. I believe Ruben Fine did not capture in the game, but it made absolutely no difference. After king d8, the idea was queen g3 mating, because the whole point is you can't play queen g3, because if queen g3, bishop f6 is mate. So that was a really cute game, and it just kind of shows why the fully compromised defense is just terrible, to say the least. But, I mean, when you look at the Lee Chess database, you can just see the win percentages here are just insane. You know, people are playing Queen E7, and then people are finding the best move with white. They're playing Knight C3. We're seeing Bishop C3. We're seeing Queen C3, which, again, those are pretty obvious moves. We're seeing Knight F6, and then we're seeing a lot of average, players playing, either E5 or Bishop A3, both of which are decent moves. But between the two, I mean, E5 is okay. Bishop A3 is kind of a spectacularly good move. And you can start seeing the winning percentages start going through the roof. We have an 86% win percentage, a 66% win percentage after D6. And more importantly, the computer loves it as well. After D6, E5, this is just huge advantage for white. We're just busting open this middle with the king here. The pawn's threatened, the knight's threatened. People are finding knight E4, which is the best move. And then really all you need to do is you need to find queen C2. And now the most popular move is Bishop F5, and it's a move that is completely losing. So you really just have to find one more move here. The move Bishop D5, which is the most accurate winning move, has a 75% win rate. But even just the move Bishop to D3, which more people are finding, has this massive 78% win rate. Now ED6 is not a good move. It gives away your entire advantage, and now black is winning. So you need to memorize the theory, or I guess we want to call this theory, at least up to this point, so you know enough to play either Bishop D5 or Bishop D3 with essentially a winning position. But I mean, even after Bishop D3, you can see your advantage is still +3, +4. You're basically winning a whole piece here. And black can't really do anything to stop it. His whole position is just falling apart. So I would recommend the Evans, especially because there's other things that people play against this that are even worse. Like if you look at the second most popular move, like knight on G to E7, people are losing 70% of the time to knight G5. That's because there's not a great option here. A lot of people, 85% of players are playing the 13,752 games. That's a huge sample size. With an average rating of 1900, are playing Castle's Kingside, which loses on the spot. After Castle's Kingside, you have Queen H5. And, of course, this is winning because we're triple attacking the F7 square and we're also threatening mate. So, like, after H6, knight F7 is completely winning. And, of course, the other line is no picnic for black either. If D5, you can actually sacrifice your knight on F7, king F7, and play takes, because after knight E5, you have bishop B3 maintaining these threats. And people, again, are scoring spectacularly well here. Mostly just because black doesn't seem to know how to deal with these threats. Like, if knight on 7 to G6, we have either CD4 or F4 are both very strong. CD4 is not a terrible move, but maybe objectively best and winning 78% of the time is just F4. And then we have something like knight G4 and F5, and we're gonna be winning stuff here. So like knight on 6 to F5, and now finally CD4, and at some point black has to give up the ghost, even though he can throw in queen h4, and now all you got to do is find bishop f4. But if you look at the player database, I guess nobody found bishop f4 in this one position. In the master's database, I don't think this has ever come up because this is just really terrible for black. But bishop f4 just holds the mate threat. We're still threatening the knight. We're still threatening the other knight. We're still threatening the king. Everything is under threat. What's interesting is there's a line very similar to this that just doesn't work incredibly well if the bishop retreats to c5. So after bishop c5, one of the things that people actually try to avoid is the half compromise beginning with knight on g to e7. Now, if you look at the Lee Chess player database, nobody plays knight on g to e7 here, and here it's supposed to actually be pretty good. So for whatever reason, average players don't think knight on g to e7 is good here, but they think it's okay with the bishop on a5. And of course, it's the exact opposite of that, because if the bishop is on c5, this a5 square is open for the knight, so it's actually a little bit better. So like when you play knight on g to e7 here and then takes, you can actually take, but more importantly, this attack starting with knight f7 doesn't work, because when you take here, the knight goes to a5 and it covers the b3 square. So now if the bishop retreats to b3, we just exchange off the bishop, and white's position is laughable. Actually, white's position is completely, totally dead lost here. So here knight on g to e7 is quite a bit more reasonable. but it doesn't seem like anybody plays it. But, I mean, of course, we don't have to play knight g5 here. We can just play c takes d4, and, white still has a slight advantage, so white's still doing fine. So I think I would really recommend the Evans, like, especially, even considering, like, a lot of people will play the fully compromised defense here, and the win percentage, of course, after bishop takes f7, this is another very well-known line, queen d5, king f8, queen c5, and then queen c3. You just look at this win percentage, it's insanely high. So one other opening you could try, like as I was doing my research, an honorable mention is just the King's Gambit. I was noticing on the Lichess player database that especially the Bishop's Gambit, like with bishop to c4, for whatever reason, amateurs cannot resist playing queen h4 check with black, which is really not the best reply. And after queen h4 check, king f1, they weren't really following this up correctly. They were playing bishop c5 and immediately giving white just huge winning percentages after d4. So that's kind of like an honorable mention of this video. But I would really recommend, if you're an average player and you want to have a really high win percentage, put some time and effort into learning the Evans Gambit. I actually do a whole series on the Evans Gambit. You can learn all the theory. It's a really good series. You can check out that series. But I do really recommend learning the Evans Gambit. But honorable mention to the King's Gambit as well, as an opening that it seems like 18 and 1900 average players really play kind of poorly. So the Evans and the King's Gambit, going back all the way to the 19th century, Paul Morphy would have cleaned house. So, anyways, I hope you found this video helpful. I hope you learned something new about chess, and I hope you can use some of these ideas in your own games. Thank you very much for watching.